Hello, everyone. I'm Vinod, and welcome to Career Bold. Today, I'm going to discuss about a very common problem faced by many people today, which is the almost impossible nature of getting through the interview process and finding a job, especially in software engineering. So, if you are in the world of software, whether you are a student or a working professional, it's almost impossible to find jobs. And I'm going to delve into why that is. So, let's begin with a post by one person I found on LinkedIn. She's a recruiter called Lucy Martinez, and she shared some astonishing statistics, which I think are absolutely important to understand to help folks understand where recruiters are when it comes to finding the right people for the right jobs. And you want to work in such a way and develop a strategy such that you help the recruiter notice yourself. So how do you make it easier for the recruiter to spot you? So that's what we're going to dig into today. First point. So there was one job posting for a software engineer, and there were 3,300 applicants approximately. Just imagine 3,300 applicants for one job. That's how terrible the job market is. And it's partly bad because there are a lot of people from the open market, especially people who have been laid off, who are also looking for the same set of jobs. So where there's people less work experience, more work experience, everybody's looking for jobs. Some of the people who have been laid off are so desperate for jobs that they are ready to take jobs which are one or two levels below what they've been working in the past. So really tight job market, and it's tough luck for everyone. So let's look at how the recruiter approached the situation. So what she did firstly is that she looked at one important factor. So when you're applying for a job, you got to look at the job description. The recruiter typically talks to the hiring manager and comes up with a job description. That's called a JD. In the JD, it's listed where the jobs are. The location is listed. So the first thing the recruiter does is she removes almost 50% of the candidates based on the match between the location listed by the candidate and the location listed on the job description. For example, let's say the job listed is in Bangalore. The recruiter is going to look exclusively for people who come from Bangalore. And that's an easy way to remove more than 50% of the applicants. You may argue that it's not a great idea because a lot of very good candidates from outside are not considered, are not given an equal shot. But again, a recruiter, understand, is not trying to identify the best possible candidate from every single resume out there. It's physically impossible for any recruiter to look at every single resume. They have to first pull it down to a number they can manage. They can maybe work with around 100 resumes, 200 resumes, but 3,000 is just too much. So they're trying to find easy shortcuts to get to a sizable number, which they can manage. And in this case, they're going to use location as a filter. So what does this mean for you? Point number one, if you really want to get a job in a certain location, make sure you relocate to that location. That's very important. If you're not able to relocate, at least provide an address of someone you really know, or think about moving to the location, at least on a short-term basis, at the time you're applying for a job. So you may want to seriously consider changing the location you're based in, especially on LinkedIn or on your resume, to the same location where the recruiter is looking for jobs. That dramatically improves your chances of success by around 100%. So take that up seriously. And again, this is a shortcut, and you want to get around the shortcut. Out of the balance 1,600 people left, around 700 candidates required some sort of, in this case, it was a US-based position, so it was that they required visa support. But then it could be something different. For example, it could be people not matching the work experience requirements. It could be people who don't match the remote or the work in site policy. So suppose the job says that you have to work on site and then you apply for a remote job, automatically it means that you're going to be out of the process. So people who don't read the JD properly, don't see the locations properly, are going to get kicked out really fast. So make sure that you read the job description in detail from the beginning to the end, and you match the minimum expectations. If you do not match the expectations, it's not worth applying because there's a 100% chance you'll get rejected. So keep that in mind, okay? So that's also important. It's also important and critical to understand that while there were 3,600 applicants for the job, there were only 7 referrals. So what this means is that even today, most people apply for jobs, just go ahead and apply on the website directly and do not put in the hard work of getting a referral. And the issue with not getting a referral is that, see, a referral is a person who's recommended by someone who's within the company. So that person will definitely stand a higher chance of being noticed by the recruiter. So the recruiter is at least gonna look at the resume of a person being referred in more detail compared to the other 3,200 resumes out there. They're not even going to look at your resume. They're just going to screen you first using lots of filters, and then whoever survives the cut are the resumes which the recruiter is going to look at. So your chances of getting noticed by a recruiter through a referral is, in this case, it is 1 out of 8. It's close to a chance of around 10 to 12%. But then your chances of getting noticed through the application on the website is 1 in 3,000. It's like 0.00 something percent. So remember, your chances are 400 times better if you put in a referral. So that's something you should not forget. Let's look at the third level of filter the recruiter does. So the recruiter tries to match the skills and experiences of the applicant versus the skills as defined in the job description. If they don't match, the person is out of the process. So a recruiter probably needs 5 seconds to scan a resume and check if the skills and experiences you provide matches what the recruiter is looking for. So do your homework. Make sure that the keywords used in the job description, the same keywords used on your resume. It can come in the objectives, it can come on the work you've done, it can come in the bullet points, which talks about the type of work you did, but make sure that the language of the JD is captured exactly on your resume. This is an easy way to get noticed. People who do not put in their homework, who probably use one standard resume and send it to like 50 companies, your chances of getting into any of the 50 companies is 0. It's better that you focus on maybe 2 or 3 companies, optimize your resume for those 3 companies, and you stand a much higher chance. So again, in this case, another 760 candidates were kicked out because their skills did not match the skills as defined in the job description. Okay, so after all this culling, there are probably around 124 candidates left out of 3,600. Remember, that's where we began. The number is less than 5% of the original number. So those are the candidates who are sent to the hiring manager for review. The hiring manager looks at the resume, does like a quick check of, does the skills match? Has this person done some remarkable work or worked in a great company, which they absolutely have to look at, even though the skills don't match, right? Some people are good in learning new skills, even if they start from scratch. So the hiring manager looks at those skills, and again, they take around 5 seconds per resume. That's really, or maybe a minute per resume to make these decisions. Finally, the hiring manager sends around 43 out of the 120 resumes back to the recruiter for a recruiting screen. The recruiter screen is the first touch point where the recruiter calls up the candidate or the applicant. They ask very basic questions. It's not even very complicated. They ask questions like, hey, why do you want to join this company? Why do you want to join this role? And they expect you to do some homework in terms of doing the research in terms of the match between your skills and the job description skills. Have you talked to any person within the company? Do you know anyone from within the company? Have you applied to this company in the past? Be genuine, be enthusiastic as an applicant to impress the recruiter. The recruiter is not technical in nature. They may ask you 1 or 2 technical questions, but it's pretty easy to fool the recruiter because they don't really know much. So be very clear in your answers. Communication skills matter a lot. Be confident, speak slowly, speak confidently. And it's very easy to impress the recruiters at this stage. A lot of people don't do that. They have very poor communication skills and they mumble and fumble through the interview process and they get kicked out. So half the candidates get kicked out at this recruiter screening process. Around 20 get through the recruiting screen and then go back to the hiring manager. And then those 20 people, the hiring manager calls them up and talks to every single person. So out of that, maybe around half, around maybe 9, 10 people are called over on site for interviews. where the entire hiring team talks to them. It could be a round of 3 to 4 interviews, or maybe 5, 6 interviews where one person after the other asks similar questions and are taking notes into how you performed. And most of these interviews tend to be in the STAR format, which is that give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work on this specific skill. Give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work with a large team of people. Give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work on a complex project. Give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work with a difficult manager. So these are easy ways to find out your skills, technical skills, business skills, and people skills. So then you finish the interview process. There is a calibration round where all the interviewers get together. They argue each person's case very vociferously and very vehemently. And typically, there are always 1 or 2 people who are not impressed in any interview. They always feel that some candidate did not do a good job. So if you want to get through an interview process, you need to have at least one stellar interview, one amazing interview, so that the person who interviewed you should advocate and fight for you. And typically what happens in most interview rounds I've sat in is that one advocate goes and convinces everybody in that calibration table that this is the greatest candidate out there and it's worth making a bet on that one candidate, and that's got to be you. So that's really how offers get made. And they also debate things like what is the compensation, and these things are important. If you had a great round of interviews, then your compensation is definitely going to be higher. If you had an average interview or weak interview, even if you get selected, your compensation is definitely going to be lower. And again, there are multiple people involved, like the HR team and so on, but I'm just talking about the first stage of the compensation review process. So this is how offers get created. And typically one offer is the top candidate gets the offer, and maybe there are 1 or 2 backups in case the people who are selected do not accept the offer. So this will give you a very good sense of how the selections get made. 1 person or maybe 2 people get selected out of 3,300 candidates. That's how difficult the situation is. You can't afford to make even 1 mistake. So follow some of the tips I've mentioned in this conversation and apply this next time when you apply for jobs and see how it works out. And let me know in the comments below how that works. Okay then folks, till next time, bye-bye.